Now, I grew up in a situation where I actually literally had to take the hits for other people, whether it was people projecting because of whatever stories they made up, whether it was my mom literally telling me that as the older brother in the house, I had to take responsibility for my younger brothers and very physically take the hits. I had a stepdad that wasn't the awesomest and needed an excuse to hit somebody. And it was the understanding that I was the person that was going to take the hits. And so I never been really a fan of the idea of taking other people's hits, even though it's been something that I've experienced in my life. And there were even times where I felt like, well, I'll just take this hit because I know I can survive this hit, but another person may not be able to. And so I've done that more times than I like to admit, and have finally been feeling like, I want to really not do that anymore. I've done it enough, even into my adulthood and actually pretty recently. Um, but then there's something beyond the dysfunction of taking people's hits when you don't need to take them that I think the universe was trying to speak into my life. Or maybe I'm making some shit up. But here's the experience, and then we can figure out if it actually means anything. Excuse me, if it actually means anything. So this morning, I was dropping my kid off to school, and these kids were playing soccer or kicking a soccer ball on the field, or in the little playground area. And this one kid, I saw him looking in my direction, but I wasn't really sure if he was looking at me. Who knows? What I do know is he kicked the ball pretty hard straight at me. And I did a little move like, whoo, and got out of the way and was like, kind of like proud of my cat like reflexes being 50 years old. I was like, whoo, I just dodged that joint. It was pretty nice until the ball hit this other little kid that's probably in the first grade. And it hit this little girl who was holding a little bowl of cereal. And it hit her, knocked her back, knocked her cereal out of her hand and her orange, and all her food fell on the ground. She bounced up, hit up against the wall, and then just was sitting on the ground with all her snacks around her, crying. And I was like, oh, snap. So by me avoiding getting hit, it hit her. And it hit her way harder because she was a little teeny girl. And then the little boys who were all playing just kind of stared at what they had done. And then I was like sitting there like, and I was just like, oh shoot, this is kind of terrible for this little kid. And I had a complex things of feelings going through my mind because it was just like, okay, I'm glad it didn't hit me, but now I wish it did. I wish that it hit me because I would have been able to deal with the hit. If it would have hit me in my stomach or chest or even in my face, it would have been not as hard on me as it was on that little girl. And then what's sad is nobody came to her aid. The other little boys just sat there. So I grabbed my daughter and said, come with me and let's check and see if she's all right. And then she was crying, picking up her little cereal and trying to put it back in the bowl. And I was like, don't eat that. Are you okay? Or whatever. And then some other people came up and was like, are you okay? Yeah. And the little boy who had kicked the ball was just kind of staring. And then I asked him, I was like, did you do that on purpose? And he was like, no, I was just trying to kick the ball, or whatever. And then I said, did you apologize? And this other lady asked him too, did you apologize? And then he was like, yeah. And then he kind of like walked off. And that was pretty much the end of that experience. But what it did is it left me with this feeling of like, there's some people in life that are actually innocent. And sometimes those of us who might have to take the hits for those people who are innocent. And I'm still not 100% clear on what I want to do with that information, but I really feel like, and obviously I can be making this up, but I feel like the universe was trying to give me a little bit of a clue of who I might take hits for sometimes. And I have been on a track over the past, few weeks dealing with my own junk that I started kind of less and less wanting to do that. But then I think there must be some instances where it's necessary. And it also brought me back to the whole Jesus story. Like, I honestly don't think that God was like, yo, let me kill my kid because all these other people suck. I think that's kind of a elementary and quite silly way of looking at things. But there could be something to a person putting themselves on the line for other people, which is something that we as humans tend to respect. as I've said in previous videos, we do have this tendency to have like a hero worship situation going on. And the idea behind the hero is that the hero can save other, the typical idea behind the hero is that the hero can save other people from harm or death. And that when they do that, the people go, "My hero, you kept me alive longer." And so, or you kept me from pain longer. And so, a lot of times, especially in the area of men, try to be heroes for that very reason and the accolades and things that come with it. And there's also some sense of your own spiritual longevity because you're able to tell a story about this heroic thing you did or whatever the case may be. And if you do enough of those heroic things in the eyes of somebody, hell, they might even make you a statue. And in some way, you're immortalized or at least longized because the statue will be around for a while until the tides change. But needless to say, this is something that not everybody can be. Not everybody can step in and be a hero all the time, and definitely not a hero to the degree they get a statue. But it does make you think, when is the right time to step in, take hits for people who might not be able to take those hits, and then why do you do it? Do you do it for the recognition, or do you do it because it's the right thing to do? Or is there some kind of impulse in us that says, hey, I should preserve a more vulnerable and innocent life? I have no idea. All I know is when I saw that little girl on the ground crying over her cereal, I felt a little sensitive. I felt kind of like, dang, man. And I also felt um, some sensitive feelings. I guess I couldn't really put my finger on it. I was still trying to figure it out. But some of it was like, do I wish that there was somebody that could have taken hits from me sometimes? Maybe. I didn't really go deep enough to figure it out, but I definitely felt sensitive. I definitely felt like it was something that I wanted to explore and I wanted to talk about, and also wanted to reintegrate because in that this effort of living into my own personal liberation, there's some things that I'm letting go, and there's some things that I might pick back up, but in a more refined way. And so the part of me that's just like, hey, I'm not going to deal with this, that, and the other thing with certain folks, I still stand by that. But then when it comes to innocent people or people who might not be able to recover as quickly from life's hits, if I can absorb some of it, um, even if it's just for a little while, maybe that's part of what I'm supposed to do. Maybe that's part of what we're supposed to do. Maybe more of us could or should be doing that for the sake of humanity. Because right now, there's a lot of vulnerable people who are taking a lot of hits, and there's not that many people absorbing the hits with them. I mean, I do think about Minneapolis and the people that got out there on behalf of their neighbors, and there's something that we see in that. So perhaps that's one of the ways that we step out in front. Or I've never been a real big person with this kind of statement, but a lot of people, because I actually don't like the term white privilege. I don't like the term, but I understand why certain people use it, and I definitely understand why some white people might use it, trying to kind of reframe how they see the world. But if I were to use it, this would be one of those cases where I maybe a person who does experience the white privilege might be able to get out in front of some people who may take a hit, and if they absorb it, it's going to be really hard to recover. And some person who experiences themselves as having that white privilege, if they're in a system that believes in that sort of thing, then maybe that's their role. Maybe they absorb some of it until uh, I don't even know. At that part, I have to figure it out. But and it could be other contexts, other situations where we just come in not because we're trying to be a hero, but because maybe it's just the right thing to do. Maybe it's the neighborly thing to do. I'm not really sure. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I definitely feel like that instance was in many ways the universe speaking to me because I've been thinking about this ever since I said that I was done with some things. I did think about kind of like, well, what if I was in a different situation and I saw somebody, would I just go, that's your problem? I don't know, because this is all new to me, like really kind of walking away from some of the things that I've kind of held as a not as a standard, but just a way of being in the world. I'm still trying to figure that out. But I will say that Ecclesiastes was probably right when it said there's a time and a place for everything under the sun. So maybe there's a time to get out of the way and let somebody else take the hits. And then there's some times where you just take the hit for someone else so that they can build up their capacity to be able to handle the hits when they can. And maybe when the time comes around, maybe they'll learn from your example and they'll take a hit for somebody else. Who knows? Just a little bit of an exploration. Thanks for taking the time to watch this if you do. And blessings to you on this wild and crazy journey that we find ourselves on. I'm hoping that more of us find ways to bring peace to this world in different ways and to be more curious about our roles. Something I'm going to be continuing to explore, and I mentioned this yesterday, is this concept of the wounded healer. I've definitely got a lot of wounds, so maybe that's part of the role I have. I'm not really sure. Like I said, it's just discovery, and these videos are more streams of consciousness where I'm just kind of talking and figuring out what needs to be said in the moment. So hopefully you watch this and you get something out of it. I appreciate you.